Jeff Paterson is our Canucks reporter, the host of RinkWide Vancouver. He joins us after a week with, I thought they were pretty ominous comments from Quinn Hughes, Jeff, about his future here in Vancouver, but how did you interpret them?
Yeah, look, there's not a person on this planet that can't look objectively at this story and think it's juicy. Three high-level brothers, two of whom play in one spot and the other who can now see unrestricted free agency from where he's from. Even if you have no time for the discourse and you want the noise to go away, you can't sit there and say that this isn't something at the very least. And so Jack went first, said what he said. Quinn was sort of dragged into it a little bit. I think Quinn is doing the best he can to stick handle this off the ice as well as he stick handles on the ice, but he too knows that it's something. It's a story there, and it's not going away. Now, if anybody has earned the benefit of the doubt to be given leeway to say what he said and believe him, and when Quinn says he's trying to live in the moment and that because he can't sign an extension until July 1st at the earliest, that really, in his world, it's not a story in the here and now, that his focus is solely on playing for the Vancouver Canucks and doing all he can to help the Vancouver Canucks. And I believe that. And we saw that last year. Through the shitstorm of distractions, there was one constant, and when he was healthy, it was that Quinn Hughes elevated, and it was unfortunate that he just couldn't bring the rest of the group along for the same ride. So I would expect that Quinn is going to be able to compartmentalize all of this and play at a level as good as pretty much anything we've seen from him in his time as a member of the Vancouver Canucks. But you can hear the clock ticking, and the story isn't going away. And so, for the people that said, if Jim Rutherford hadn't said what he said, this wouldn't be... No, come on, this market's way too savvy. We went through this with Elias Pettersson and his contract. People can connect the dots here and recognize that this is a story that's coming down the line. Now, Quinn's been sort of painted into a corner a little bit in as much as the minute Luke was drafted by the Devils, this became a story, right? If Luke goes to Anaheim or Columbus or Nashville or anywhere else, it's
not the
three
same
brothers
story. No.
in three separate spots, and the logistics are basically impossible. But when it was 2v1 and the one is approaching a point where he can control his future, then this is going to be a story without a doubt. So I thought Quinn did his best to sort of tamp down the firestorm, but in a market like this one, and really around the NHL, the firestorm's going to continue to rage.
The thing is, though, Jeff, we talked about it yesterday. I thought he would have come armed with that diplomatic NHL answer we've heard a million times before. I'm fully focused on this season. My contract can't be dealt with till next summer. I'll deal with it then. But he's asked that question about, is there a chance that you can stay in Vancouver? He doesn't answer in the affirmative, and he starts talking about, I've really enjoyed my time in Vancouver. To me, that was the chilling stuff from a guy who, put it together with what Rutherford and Jack said. I mean, it almost sounds like there's a plan afoot already, the way he addressed it this week.
Well, look, Matt, I think there is a world in which Quinn Hughes has made up his mind. Again, he can't act on it, really, until next summer. Now, I think it's important to note for hockey fans, because there's so much talk about, he's eligible to sign an extension next July 1st. That doesn't mean that he and the Canucks can start talking on July 1st. Look at Connor Garland and Thatcher Demko on July 1st this year, a year out from the expirations of their deals. Boom, extensions were announced. That means they've been talking about this with their agent, their families, and with the Vancouver Canucks for a while. So at some point, I would think that the two sides here, as this season unfolds, are going to have to really kind of get down to brass tacks, and the Canucks need to get a better sense of where it is, because things do change on July 1st next year. If the Canucks don't have an extension to announce with Quinn Hughes, then you're entering Connor McDavid territory, except that McDavid doesn't have brothers that play together elsewhere. But you see what's happening in Edmonton now, just a constant discourse about that, and understandably so, and some real concern there, and I think the same goes. So Quinn Hughes isn't getting traded this year. He's not getting traded at this year's deadline. He's a Vancouver Canuck, and his sole focus is to make the Canucks better. And I do believe him when he said, if things go well, winning is fun. That is going to certainly help the Canucks' cause in trying to convince him to stay. If things go sideways, well, then all bets are off. But, and I think you guys talked about this too, I remember Blake saying somewhere along the line, like, there's no guarantee that the New Jersey Devils are any better than the Vancouver Canucks when it comes time to make that ultimate decision. And I don't know that the lure of playing with his brothers on a mediocre team is enough. Quinn Hughes is about to turn 26. Time marches on. We've watched this guy grow up in front of our eyes. If he has the kind of career that he wants, he's going to play till he's 36. He may play a little bit longer, but let's just use 36. He has 10 more cracks at a Stanley Cup. Like, it moves by in the blink of an eye. And if he's a free agent and the New Jersey Devils are spinning their wheels, you're telling me that he's going to elect to go play with his brothers just because it's fun when he really hasn't had a sniff at like a prolonged, playoff run. So it's not an either or. Like, I do think that absolutely door number 3 is a legitimate option in the eyes of Quinn Hughes, and door number 3 being a chance to go somewhere where he has a legitimate shot at winning. And so there's pressure on the Canucks to provide that. In the back of the minds, the Devils obviously want to make it a soft landing spot for him, but ultimately I think there's going to be a number of factors at play here. So it is, again, like, it's not a story that's going anywhere, but it is a story with all sorts of arms and legs.
But muddying the water even more is the Connor McDavid narrative, where he's been to the Stanley Cup final 2 years in a row, like minutes away from hoisting the chalice, if you want to put it plainly. And even he's like, yeah, I'm not convinced. Your bar changes. Where you think a team is really in the eye of the beholder, right?
Yeah, you're right. Like, so where could Connor McDavid put himself unless we get into sort of that NBA territory of trying to absolutely stack teams with stars, but in a salary cap world, even an escalating salary cap world, that's going to be difficult. So, yeah, I mean, that's why I say, like, there's no easy answer here.
No.
I think the easiest answer is that the Vancouver Canucks do everything in their power to have the kind of season that they hope they do, that Quinn Hughes is in an environment where he's able to thrive and play and produce like he did 2 years ago when he won his first Norris Trophy. They have to have a little bit of good fortune on the health front, obviously, because we saw what happened last year. And so all of that, training camp next week, and training camp goes by quickly as well, but those 3 days in Penticton, it's about team building. It's about putting the building blocks in place to then springboard into a preseason and be ready to hit the ground running on October the 9th, because the games in October mean as much or more than the games late in the season if the games late in the season don't mean anything. And we've all been through way too many years where that's been the case for the Vancouver Canucks. So, need a fast start, need the stars to step up and produce, and everybody pulling on the rope in the right direction. That's really what's in the control of the Vancouver Canucks. And, it won't be long now till we start to peel back some layers and get some answers to the many questions that face this hockey club this season.
Is the indirect pressure on Elias Pettersson here? Because, like in the Quinn Hughes prism, like if Elias Pettersson's a superstar again this year, then I think Quinn Hughes feels a lot better about the situation here in Vancouver. But if Elias Pettersson is a 55-point player again, I think he's probably looking around going, what are the prospects of anybody helping me out here in the next few years? And that's pretty ominous.
And I kind of lost track of which of the many interviews and podcasts he did this week, but I think Quinn basically laid it at the feet of Elias Pettersson at some point, where he said, like, I played through this distraction that, I felt this team needed me. I need some of these other guys, and some of the other guys looking at you, EP40, without a doubt. And so much of the Canucks' success or lack of this year is going to hang on Elias Pettersson. And I think he understands that as well. That doesn't guarantee that he's going to get back to the heights of a 102-point player, but he certainly can't be a 45-point guy again and think that this team is going to be able to push its way to a playoff spot. So indirectly, directly, whatever. I mean, I think Elias Pettersson understands the pressure from the outside, but it kind of felt like Quinn Hughes was not pointing fingers, but basically laying it bare for all of his teammates that I can't do it alone here, guys. I finished 26 points ahead of anybody else in team scoring somehow last season. That cannot happen again, and this team have success.
100%, Jeff. I made the same comment yesterday, and you'll remember Quinn was asked that question about Elias at his end-of-season media availability, and he basically just punted. He said, like, I am not going to be responsible, accountable for somebody. Like, everybody has to do their part in the summer. Speaking of, when we talked to you Monday, you said you wanted to see something from Elias in these informal skates with the added weight and strength. Did you see something from number 40 this week, Jeff?
I did make my way out to UBC on Tuesday, and it was interesting to see the way that they had sort of divided the labor, that they had scaled it back to a veterans-only session. There were 15 veteran skaters and 3 goaltenders on the ice. Nikita Tolopilo was the least experienced of the bunch, but when it came to skaters, it was all guys that you would expect are going to be on the opening night roster. Then there was a second group that skated, and it was basically all the hopefuls. Throw the names, Ratu and Sasson and Baines and Linus Karlsson and DPD and Tom Lander. They were all out there in the second group of the day, but no room for the young guys with the main group that was skating. Quinn was really the only guy that was missing. And you know what struck me more than anything I saw from Elias Pettersson? And it was fine. But there wasn't really much to gauge from a September 9th or 10th skate. But what struck me was, for all the talk about these Abbotsford guys and the Calder Cup run and everything else, like when you see the veterans skating, you realize really how few jobs are truly up for grabs. Ratu's spot at third line center is there, and he wasn't on the ice. And then really when you shake it down with the forward group, there's a fourth line left wing spot that is there. And then there's a battle, I guess, for sort of the sixth defenseman. But what you see on the roster is what you've got. And then it's a question of, can they somehow find the good vibes of 2 years ago where everybody had a career year, they stayed relatively healthy? My one takeaway from Tuesday, guys, was it really was comforting to see Thatcher Demko back in goal, moving freely, looking like the Thatcher Demko of a couple of seasons ago. When you think of where he was at this time last year, where didn't have the clearance to go participate at training camp other than to be on the ice with the goalie coaches, but wasn't facing NHL shooters. And obviously that story developed until he made his season debut on December the 10th. So in early September, to see Thatcher Demko out there facing NHL shooters, looking completely healthy, and let's hope that he is. Maybe that was the most promising sort of takeaway that I had from my trip to Point Grey on Tuesday.
Is there any chance that a guy like a Vitaly Kravtsov starts the season with the Vancouver Canucks? Is there any Cinderella story, him or otherwise, do you think? Or is that what you're talking about with regards to the number of jobs, that there's just no room right now?
It's kind of funny. He was one of the guys that I didn't see. He wasn't in either group, to the best of my knowledge, on Tuesday. So I'm not sure if it was just a day off for him. Nobody's taking attendance at these things. They're not mandatory. And some guys perhaps opting for an off-ice workout. Jonathan Lekermacki wasn't on the ice on Tuesday, but he was part of the Abbotsford training camp group that's heading to Seattle this weekend. So he's fine and ready to go. But for me, Kravtsov's one of those guys that, just dipping his toe in it, that's not going to get it done. Right? 16 games with the Canucks, I barely remember them. I doubt he remembers them. There wasn't much there. But he has made the choice to come back to the National Hockey League. He is familiar with a lot of the people. He would have some degree of familiarity with Adam Foote. He didn't make a great first impression, quite frankly. And so, it's not going to be enough for him just to kind of go through the motions and try to play it safe at training camp. I need to see this guy that, sixth in KHL scoring last year, that seems like he has grown up and matured and found his game. He's going to be one of the guys that I watch pretty closely at training camp. And even though training camp's just 3 days, I still think, he's got to come in, he's got to test well, the fitness testing, that's got to be the start of it. And he has to be ready.
He has to work.
Drop of the first puck. And I think he's one of those guys that kind of has to go above and beyond. The Canucks don't owe him anything. He's on one of those contracts. He'd make some decent money down in the American Hockey League, but unless he is markedly better than the options that they've got, in my mind, he's not making the opening night roster. That doesn't mean he's not going to play games for the Vancouver Canucks at some point this season, but I just think he's in tough, and I think it's totally on him to be one of the training camp standouts.
Well, the good news for him is he knows what went wrong the first time. So he just has to, he knows what he needs to cure and to be a National Hockey League player. And that's good, but it's just another thing to do it.
Baines, Karlsson, Sasson, Lekermacki, Kravtsov. I think there's a winger job on line 4 for one of those 5 men.
Yeah.
I think the other 11
Assuming
forward
health.
spots.
Assuming health.
Assuming good health. I think the other 11 forward spots are spoken for, as Jeff notes. We heard from Lankinen this week, Jeff, and I was talking yesterday on the show that, years ago you developed your, backup goalie expectation model, starts, wins, points that you need out of your backup goalie. Does it apply in this scenario? First of all, refresh everybody. And does it apply in this scenario, or do you anticipate that Kevin Lankinen will be more than your average Bear backup goalie and get more starts in a more of a shared arrangement with Thatcher? You tell me.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it depends on Thatcher and his health. And so, I am curious to see. Adam Foote, rookie head coach, team needs this good start that we talked about. There's a total through line here. Like Bruce Boudreau took over, and what did he do? He rode Thatcher Demko. And as I recall, Thatcher Demko was one of the stars of the week. In the first week on the job for Bruce Boudreau, the old, show me a good coach, I'll show you a guy with a good starting goaltender. But you can't blame Boudreau. He was trying to sort of stabilize things, and he came in and he rode Thatcher Demko hard. And then Rick Tocchet comes in, and same sort of deal. What does he do? He leans an awful lot on Thatcher Demko. Adam Foote has been here for a while now. He knows the history of Thatcher Demko. Thatcher Demko is going to be 30 in December. Can Adam Foote fight the urge to play Thatcher Demko and play him a lot early on because this team needs to get out of the gates reasonably quickly? So that's one of the things I'm going to be watching. Now, some of the pressure should be taken off, knowing that you've got a totally capable backup in Kevin Lankinen, who really carried this team in the early stages last season. So I think there is this sense around the hockey club that you're still looking at like a 45 to 48 starts for Thatcher Demko in a perfect world, and that'll leave enough on the table for Kevin Lankinen, in the mid-30s in terms of starts. But again, I could see a world where they push Demko if he's healthy and he's playing well. Have to keep in mind it's a condensed season too with the Olympics there, so there's going to be some nights where they simply don't have the option. They're going to have to split the goaltending starts. Through all of that, is there a world in which Kevin Lankinen could push beyond just being the backup? Again, I think some of that comes down to Thatcher Demko's health and his performance. And remember, too, guys, we talked about, it took him until December 10th to make his season debut last year. But even then, the next 6 weeks weren't great for Thatcher Demko. It wasn't until the 2 weeks before the Four Nations break where he really got into a groove and dialed it up for 6 or 8 starts. And then he got hurt in that Toronto game before the Four Nations break, and then we didn't see him for a while again. So I think there's a world in which less is more when it comes to Thatcher Demko. And ultimately, guys, that's the other thing too, is as much as you want to see Thatcher Demko healthy and play, we all want to see Thatcher Demko play playoff hockey. That's the one thing. This guy's got Vezina votes. He's been to All-Star games. He's got his contract extension. The one thing he doesn't have on his resume, he's got 4 NHL Stanley Cup playoff starts, which is just wild.
And he's been awesome in them,
and
Jeff.
he has
been
that's
the cruel irony of all of this.
Right.
He's been outstanding.
I have to believe that he burns to play playoff hockey and play when the pressure is on and the lights are the brightest and all that kind of stuff, but he can't do it unless he helps the hockey club through the regular season. So the goaltending workload is going to be a fascinating one to me.
Can't fall in love with him, right? We've been saying, you can't fall in love with him and give him 8 straight starts at any point this season.
No.
And so I think, Lankinen is, he's kind of funny to me. Nothing seems to faze the guy. And we learned that about him last year. As low-key as they come, but he was ready when the Canucks asked him. And he ran into trouble when they overplayed him because Rick Tocchet ran out of confidence and patience in Artur Silovs, and his only wins came against the Chicago Blackhawks, and so they needed somebody to play goal, and they ran into a position where they were playing Lankinen too much, and that's where you saw his play fall off. But most goaltenders fall in that boat. They can give you 4, 5, 6 good starts in a row, but as you said, if you're tempted to try to push it to 8, 9, 10, that's when trouble presents itself. So Canucks, they believe in what they've got, and I believe in it as well. I mean, I don't know, I'm not going to sit here and say they've got the best tandem in the National Hockey League, but they've got the potential to have one of the best tandems. And so, most nights they should have as much or more goaltending than the other
right.
team.
Which
And that has
leads
to- And that
which
has to
leads
make
me
a
to
difference.
Key to
which
victory.
leads me to the
That's-
question: are you okay with a bunch of 2-1 victories? If you're
Yeah,
a
look,
Canuck
it's
fan.
not going to be pretty. And it's funny because when I was in with you last week and we talked to Greg Bell about the best path forward for the Seattle Seahawks, and he said, like, look, the Hawks don't care what it looks like as long as they've got more points on the board than the other team at the end of the day. And that's ultimately what it is about. What do they say in golf? Number or no pictures on the scorecard. I think there's an element of that for the Vancouver Canucks. They have to be prepared to win 3-2 and 2-1. And even Quinn Hughes in his chat with Ian McIntyre at the outset of the month, where he said, like, I recognize we're not the most skilled team. I don't think that was Quinn throwing shade at management or anybody else. It was him recognizing that there are other ways to carve a path to success in the National Hockey League, and that can mean defending. It may not be aesthetically pleasing on a lot of nights. It may be low event. And maybe Canuck fans have to get used to that. But the name of the game is winning. And I wrote about this at Canucks Army earlier this week. I sort of had, I guess, pushed it out of my mind about just how inept the Canucks were on home ice last season with 17 wins in 41 games. Like, that's an area that they have to get better. And this sort of comes back to your point, like where's the balance of putting on a show for the fans and getting people excited and giving them something to cheer about on a nightly basis, or ultimately do the fans just want to leave the building after the home team wins? And so I don't expect that this is going to be a high-flying bunch. I think that they are going to have to grind out a lot of wins. The problem is that there's going to be a lot of nights where the other team does get 3 or 4. And how do the Canucks fare on those nights? Can they muster enough offense to try to keep up and keep pace? Or, when the other team gets to 3, is that when trouble sets in for the Vancouver Canucks?
Lastly, Jeff, we have heard you in seasons past around this time deride the one-day contract. Yes. You were very much against the one-day retire as a blank contract. Marc-Andre Fleury signing a PTO with the Penguins so he can get run in a preseason game, play with Sidney, Gino, and his old mates, get the crowd applause. Do we approve of this, Jeff? Is this a better way to do the one-day retirement contract?
Well, you had me scared there when you said he gets run in a preseason game. What's happening here? Is this going to be like Milan Lucic and Ryan Miller many years ago?
No, get some run, not
I
get
understand.
Run. Get some run. Okay,
I got you now. I was a little worried.
Nobody's going to run the flower in this last game.
I didn't know what you were setting. Yeah, I think it's against Columbus. Do the Blue Jackets have something against Marc-Andre Fleury that everybody loves the flower?
That was a really good rivalry at one point, actually.
And Blake was spot on. Blake's having a good day here already. When he posted that this sort of changes the calculus for these one-day things. If you're going to sign a one-day, you damn well get out there, suit up, and play. And we've seen, like, the Blackhawks have done the one more lap thing where they've brought back legends in
That's
full
not
uniform.
bad, but this is better, yeah.
And I was there in Chicago for one of those nights. It was a Chris Chelios or somebody, and it's a cool moment to see, a flash from the past in uniform one last time. So I like that idea. But this is raising it a little bit. I thought that we had said our goodbyes to Marc-Andre Fleury, but I'm all for this. I think it'll be a terrific night. The one thing I didn't grasp fully in the press release from the Penguins was that it said he was going to play. I can't remember how they worded it exactly, but it sounded like he might make a couple of appearances in that game. So are they just going to keep putting him in and pulling him out and getting like a pitcher when he, the manager comes out and you get the big salute? Are they going to do that a couple of times for the flower?
They said parts of. You're right. Parts of.
So
yeah. I didn't think of it that way, but you're right. Yeah.
But I'm okay. It's preseason. If you want, have some fun with it. If they wanted to yank him a couple of times so that he could get the love, I'm down with that. I like it. And I'm not sure it goes for everybody, but his personality is so huge that you can know, that he's going to lap it up, that the fans are going to shower him with the love that he deserves. And I think it should be a lot of fun.
That big smile of his.
We'll shower you with love Monday after this prospect showcase, Jeff. Appreciate the time. Until then.
All right, guys. Have a great weekend.